course. I am self-proclaimed the amplifier, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. I've spent about 2 decades traveling around the world studying human connection and resilience, and in the process of that, doing some really wonderful hands-on philanthropy work that I've had the pleasure of doing with a lot of different nonprofits, and sometimes even just by myself on a research journey. So my specialty is human connection and resilience. My joy, my why in life is to fill other people's cups, and I do that through both philanthropy work and also writing, speaking, and coaching. That is everything to me. It means everything to me. So by a show of hands, who works in a creative industry? Okay, almost everyone. By another show of hands, who is a creative? Because that should be all of us. I have a secret that I believe that we talk a lot in the workplace about what I call the Superman. So in the workplace, we get rewarded, whether we use these words or not, we get rewarded a lot for being industrious, having ingenuity, doing things that are problem solving and kind of in a box, right, a structure. And so we call that kind of the Superman of creativity. In my mind, these things are very interrelated with the Clark Kent, which is actually creativity and innovation. That's where it comes from, right? When you problem solve in the workplace, even if it seems like something that fits in a box, you're actually using your creativity, you're using your innovation skills to do it. So I like to think of these things as kind of the secret Superman and Clark Kent of creativity. I, of course, as mentioned, I study resilience. And I think the secret to creativity is actually resilience. And I'll tell you why, and we'll talk about the 3 E's of that. I love this phrase, real artists ship. And I wish I could attribute who first told me this phrase. But even if you're not an artist, the key to a creative endeavor, whether that is a work project, whether that is a personal project, if you're going to write that book, if you're going to reorganize your closet with bins and labels, whatever it is getting to the finish line, right? We can have all the ideas in the world, but the real power is what we get out into the world, right? So real artists ship. And so that is where my connection between creativity and resilience comes from. This idea of completing the circle, completing the cycle from ideation to final product and to get it out the door. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I have a 3E method. I use it in a lot of different contexts. I think it has some kind of universal skeleton structure that works with personal development. It works with organizational development. I'm going to talk about it today as it relates to creativity. The first section of that is excavate your attic. So I think something that Maxim said at the beginning of today was, in order to do something out in the world, we have to first know ourselves, right? And that's what excavate the attic means. We have to know our own fears. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror and be really honest with ourselves about what are our real talents, and where in the project that we might be thinking about working on, or where in our life's goals, do we not have the talent? And we need to find that yin and yang that Justine just talked about. Where are our pains? What are we holding? What are those boxes that are in our mental attic? They're hanging out up there, and they're full of kind of shame or pain or past hurt or past trauma. And maybe we've sort of dealt with it, but we're still carrying it around in kind of a life backpack. Or maybe we haven't dealt with it at all because we just put it in that box and pushed it to the back. But it is affecting you, right? I had this great psychologist that I met at a networking event once who said, he was specifically talking, he was a veteran psychologist, and he was specifically talking about the veteran journey. But he said, we can, if you think about a post office, and there's a lot of post office boxes everywhere, right? We can put things in these individual little post office boxes. But if it's a hot day, think about like volcano temperatures, right? All of that stuff starts to melt, and they start to drip from one box to another to another. And we've tried really hard to shove them in those boxes, but eventually they're going to drip. And the only way to get past that is to take the master key and open up the whole door where you can see all those boxes and start to deal with them one by one. Start to bring it out. Understand that they are affecting each other no matter how much we want to compartmentalize. And so excavating your attic is really about just being really honest, looking in the real mirror about who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things. I have a writer friend who, I'll flip to this one. I have a writer friend who went through a very prestigious MFA program. She was sure she was going to be a writer. She was sure she was going to do it. And we do a weekly accountability call, and we just check in on each other. And I said, "How you doing?" She goes, "I hate writing. why did I do this? And I kind of talked her backwards through the process of like, okay, let's talk about what you really hate. Because you can't hate writing when you were passionate enough to finish an entire MFA program on it. Or can you? Like, when did you realize that you didn't really enjoy this? And what about it did bring you joy that doesn't now? And so it's talking through that stuff. And so I put this slide up because I think about the process of creativity as being your green light flow, right? If you're in it, and you know when you're in it, you know when you feel, and maybe you don't think about it as being something creative. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's taking that walk by the creek. Maybe it is, whatever, playing chess, whatever it might be. You know when you're in the flow, when you're in your green zone. So it's really important to know what those are for you. And, a lot of people do this thing. We talked, I think Ryan talked about classifications, right? And so we think about, I do yoga. That is a thing I enjoy. But then you don't think about the concepts of that, bringing that in and making that part of the rest of your life, right? We like to put things in boxes. It somehow is for many of us easier to compartmentalize. But understanding where your flow is, and then conversely, understanding where your red lights are. If there are things in life that you just dread, that you hate, you can't always change them. Sometimes you can, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But sometimes you can't change them. But knowing them, acknowledging them, and honoring them, this is a challenge, right? I have banned the word stress in my house. I don't allow the word stress. I just say it's a challenge. Challenges can be overcome. Stress just hangs out like a person like a visitor that never wants to leave, right? Stress just sits there. It's heavy. It's ugly. It's heavy. But challenges are like, oh, I can do this. So we've reframed that in our house because sometimes, to your point, Justine, words matter. Words matter. The next step in this process, right? So let's say you did all the work. You have sat in front of the mirror. You've said, I am all these things. Okay, now what? What do I do with it? Then it's time to think about cleaning out that attic. And if you ever cleaned out a closet, you usually get at minimum 2 piles, maybe 3 piles, depending if some stuff goes to the landfill and some stuff goes to charity. But there's a pile of discard and there's a pile of things that are still really valuable. And you love them and you want to honor them, keep them. They remain yours, right? And it's the same with where we are in life. Every so often, we should unpack the backpack that we carry around with us through life and say, what still serves me? What served me then, and I love them for that chapter of my life, but I'm in a new chapter, and I don't need to carry that right now. I have an author friend, Jen Pasiloff, who talks about working at a news cafe. I forget the real name of her cafe, but in LA for 14 years she worked there. And the cooks were so familiar with her, in fact, she carried a giant JanSport backpack everywhere she went, that they would sneak items into it and then take bets on how long until she noticed. Right? She would work these double shifts. She'd come in, she would notice. And it's such a great metaphor for life because how often do we just put things in there? We just put things in our life backpack and we don't take the time to unzip it, take everything out and say, okay, what am I really needing to carry with me every day? And what else can I just either discard for good or put away for now because it's not a chapter that I'm in right now. And so it's a great metaphor for eliminating those obligatory things that we are carrying around that weigh down our creativity, that weigh down our ability to think in new ways. For me, when I started doing philanthropy work, I got a lot of detractors. People that were jealous, people that were scared for me, people that were confused by why I would want to focus my free time and not sit on a beach in Cabo on my vacations, but go to Sierra Leone and work with girls in a school with no running water and no air conditioning, right? They couldn't understand it. But I knew that something in that work mattered to me. And it mattered to me deeply in a way that I couldn't articulate to other people. And so eliminating the obligation to fit into someone else's mold, to be the kind of researcher that doesn't just read academic works and sit. But for me, the research had to be hands-on. I had to be there in this environment in order to do it. There's a great quote. It's actually become a little bit more famous now because of the documentary by Bob Marley. It says, "Possessions make you rich. I don't have that kind of life. I don't have that kind of richness. My richness is life." And that is a quote I have lived by way before the documentary came out and actually made it famous. Because this scene of me, I was by myself trekking through the jungles of Nepal to these villages and working with women there. with no group, no other people, and it was the greatest, most rich moments of my life. And it's how I learn about what real human connection is. And that human connection is what I want, what I bring back to the creative works that I do here in America in my regular life. That I had to be able to say, I don't care what you think. I don't care about, the detractors that tell me that you shouldn't be doing that. You should be focusing on your career. You should be building your 401k. You should be staying at home, building a family. So it goes back to the neurology of connection, right? In America, we talk a lot about, or in Western countries, particularly America, we talk a lot about resilience in a way that is very individualistic, right? Pick yourself up by your bootstraps, figure out how to, persevere, build your own grit, right? I actually fully believe that resilience is based in connection. And I believe there's two pieces to resilience. One is adaptability, which I think we talk about a lot in other ways. The other is connection. And there's a science to it, right? You have the connection piece, and then you have the impact that it leaves with you, right? These permanent neurological changes that happen when we are connected to people. And those, your connections can be anything. It can be the person sitting next to you, it can be the person you meet at a coffee shop, it can be a person you meet halfway around the world. It doesn't matter. Human connection changes us, changes our neurological structures, changes the way that we think, and it opens up our mind to new creative pathways and new ways of being. The last step in this is called Embolden Your Resolve, right? So I'm going back to my real artist ship. You got to get all the way through, and that takes some resolve, right? It takes some resolve to finish it out, to finish the project. So you might have heard at some point the story of a bison. So the story's been changed a little bit. They're very, very honored tradition in the Native American culture for their resilience and for their particular behavior around storms. So some of the myths say that they run towards storms. That's not really true. But what they do is they stand. They're the only animal in existence, a known existence, that stands directly facing and lets the storm come over them. And you can see it in the way they're structured, right? They have big puffs of hair up front, and then they're sort of more naked on the back, right? It's because they stand and they just take it. They take the storm. So I'm working on my second book right now. It's actually called Into the Storm, which is really about facing what life has for us head on, and allowing it to wash over us and to take it in and to deal with it as it comes, instead of doing that thing we do where we sort of hide from it or try to compartmentalize it or put it away, right? We can get through it quicker if we just face it and face it head on. And so Embolden Your Resolve for me is always about, all right, let's go. Like, there will be challenges. There will be hurdles. There will be setbacks. We'll go 3 steps. We'll go back 2. It's fine, but I'm just going to face it. I'm going to face forward. I can't hide from it. There's this great story. If you've read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about Ruth Stone, who is a poet who talks about the creativity tiger in her own way. And my interpretation that I take from this and internalize is there's sort of 3 ways you can handle a tiger that's running at you, right? You can be ready, and you're going to jump on its back, and you're going to take the ride because you are so ready to grab that creative energy and ride that tiger all the way in. There's a tiger. I don't really know. Am I ready for this project? I don't really know. Wait, I don't want it to pass me by. And you grab its tail, and you're still along for the ride, and your creativity process still goes, but it's a bumpier ride, right? You're bouncing along in the tail in the back. Or you could say, I'm not ready. I'm scared. Any of these things, and you just step aside, and it runs past you. And it may never come back, right? And so creativity is a moving being. It's energy. It's movement. And so honoring the creative tiger, being ready for it, not letting fear. If you're really not ready, it's okay to step aside and let it go. But if you're doing that because you're scared, think about at least grabbing the tail. It's a bumpy ride, but you can do it. This is the Rosie. She is a 1950s refurbished Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus trailer that now lives at the Hotel Luna Mystica in Taos, New Mexico. When I wrote my first book at 10 years old, unpublished, it's in colored pencil, sitting on my shelf in a frame. And I've wanted to be a writer for my entire life. And yet I took career paths that were safe, right? I went into communications. I got a PhD to write public policy. I wrote political speeches. I did, academic research. I did all these other things, right? That all felt a little Dharma adjacent, to be quite honest, but they paid the bills. It was good. I was writing, right? One day I said, I need to get this creative work out of my soul. It's clogging up the pipes of all the other creative stuff I can possibly do. And so I've got to get it out. And so I rented the Rosie for a week. I sat in there and I just worked just on my creative process. Now, that's not how everyone needs to write. Not everyone needs to hole up in a refurbished trailer in New Mexico in order to put out their great creative work, right? But you have to know what you need and you have to give it to yourself, right? I waited over a decade to make this choice, and my book came out just months after doing this. It was that quick when it turns, because I said, I'm going to do this. I'm focused. And I knew I needed that, right? That's the way I had to process it. So knowing how to process will help you embolden that resolve, right? Figuring out your way to get to the artistship standpoint, right? For whatever creative endeavor or energy you're trying to put out in the world. The other thing that helps me as I work on emboldening my resolve is looking at life's challenges as an adventure, right? If we say life is status quo happy, when something bad happens or something disappointing happens, we go down into like a crevice, right? But when we say life is an adventure, adventures are expected to have ups and downs, right? Adventures are expected to be in and out. So I work really hard to look at life always as an adventure. And by doing that, it turns this muddy creek, which could be terrible to walk in, into something fun and interesting and different. Something, feeling what mud feels like in your toes is probably not something everybody does every day, right? Some of you, maybe, if you work in archaeology or some other field, but I don't, right? I sit behind a computer in different places unless I'm doing philanthropy work. And so, not that is me, but I've been in this situation. But the idea that you can enjoy something that might otherwise be terrible or uncomfortable is the way to reframe our mindset to not be discouraged, to help build upon, that resilience, that finish product by framing it as an adventure so that you don't get discouraged and want to just quit. So this is my personal interpretation of resilience, adaptability, and connection. That's my definition of resilience. There are thousands and thousands of books on resilience, and hardly any of them talk about the connection piece. And I feel like it is absolutely the key to resilience. And resilience is at the heart of creativity. So my 3 E's: excavate your attic, eliminate your obligations, embolden your resolve. That's something I believe for personal or professional development is a skeleton structure that everyone can quickly reference and use. This is me. That's my Rosie project, or the Rosie trailer project. That's my publishing house. And I thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak.